I want to talk to you about how to brand yourself, your business, or your blog, basically whatever you want to brand. Now, the reason I want to make this video and this blog post is because I think that there's a lot of confusion out there with regard to this word brand. A lot of people are out there using this word, but really they don't completely understand what the heck it actually means. They're just using it because they hear a lot of other people use it, and they think that it's just fancy marketing jargon, so they're going to go use it too. You also get a lot of people who are confused about whether they should use a personal brand. You see that word used a lot, by the way, personal brand, especially in social media circles. But they use it because it's like another buzzword, but they don't really understand what it means. Merely being out there and tweeting a lot doesn't mean you've got necessarily a brand. So let's actually discuss what a brand actually is, and let's make this actually useful and something that applies to the world of business. So first of all, what is a brand? Well, a brand, when you really get down to it, it's a mental image picture. Now, keep this in mind. We all basically think in pictures. We don't tend to think in words. We think in pictures. Words are just a symbol, which usually brings some picture to mind, because that's usually the way that we think. So a brand is a mental image picture which forms in the mind of your prospect when they see your stuff. It's something that we think of when we see what's going on. When we see the Nike swoosh, which is a great example of branding, by the way, when we see that little swoosh, we get certain mental image pictures that come to mind. We think of the runner who's out there and they're making things happen, and you know, we have this feeling of accomplishment and making things happen. That's really what comes to mind when we see the Nike brand. So it's a mental image picture. Now, this mental image picture matches what your prospect needs and wants. Now, when you have a properly defined brand, that's exactly what's happening. Is that this picture that we've created is matching what they want. That's what makes the brand work, and that's what makes it a very powerful idea. And this picture makes people want to do business with you. Whatever brand that you're creating for yourself, if we're using it for proper purposes, it's because that mental image picture is going to serve a need or a want that they have. It's going to be something that they identify with, and they want that. So that's what the brand is. It's ultimately a mental image picture. So let's look at the components of it with regard to our online activities. Well, you've got a logo, obviously. You've got a tagline. A lot of people, they tend to downplay the importance of that tagline on their website. It's actually extremely important. You've got the overall name of your blog or the name of your business, and then you have your primary ad image. Now, these are the four big things. Now, obviously, there are other things that go into making up this brand. If we're talking about a blog, it also comes down into the types of videos that you make, the types of blog posts that you create, and all of it's supposed to back up the overall brand. But the top four are these right here. Now, when you're considering your logo, what is it about your logo which is actually going to help with this mental image picture that we're creating? Same thing with the tagline. Many times the tagline, especially for bloggers, is best utilized to clarify what the brand is we're trying to do, to get rid of all the ambiguity out there in terms of what we're actually doing. It's especially important if you're using a site that has your name on it, where your name is the domain, because your name doesn't mean anything to anybody. So you have to kind of define what the site is about. And the tagline and the logo really go hand in hand with that. Now, the name is also extremely important. You know, if you're using your name like I used to as my brand, well, it doesn't really mean anything. How does the name back up this creation of a real brand? Now, obviously, there are, like I said, a lot of other things that go into this, so it's perfectly possible to brand somebody's name. I mean, I can think of Tony Robbins. Obviously, he's branding his name. You think of Oprah. Obviously, that represents a brand. So it doesn't mean that the brand cannot be somebody's name. That's obviously not correct. But you still want to think of this going in. If your name doesn't really mean much of anything, then you might want to question, do you really want to use your name as the brand? And then you've got the primary ad image. Now, you're probably going to be using a lot of images out there on the web. But when you put your ad campaigns together and the logo and maybe any imagery that you have in your header, you want to take into account what that image is communicating. because it also, again, all forms together to create this mental image picture, which is going to form the brand that we want. So how do we go about finding out what this brand should be? Well, one really powerful way to do it is direct interviews. And this is something that I go over a lot more inside my academy, and I think it's a big differentiating point between me and a lot of other people teaching in this market, because a lot of bloggers, a lot of online business owners, we tend to be introverts and we tend not to want to talk to anybody. But in reality, that is the single best way to get the best intelligence you can on your prospects, is to talk to them. So interviews are a big one, and there's a lot of information that goes into how you interview them, what kinds of things you want to talk to them about. But the data that you learn there will help you create the brand, help you learn what pictures that you want to make your brand match. You also want to analyze your competition, find out what areas they're trying to own, what brand comes to mind, what image comes to mind when you look at your competition, and then you can find out if they own that particular area, well, you might want to go into a different area. This also comes down into a very well-known book called The Blue Ocean Strategy, where they talk about that kind of a concept. You also want to consider your strengths. What can you bring to the table that people that you're competing with cannot bring to the table? And that will help also define the type of brand you want to create. And then what you want to do is you want to brainstorm ideas that basically merge these three concepts together into a single concept. And you want to think of what the mental image picture is that you're trying to create. And then you want to look at these four components, which is the logo, tagline, name, and the primary ad image, and how you can actually make those things coincide to create this brand that you want. Now, here's a quick example, and I'm just going to give you this as a guideline, but it's not necessarily because this is the best branding I've ever done in my life, but I'm going to show you some of the thought that went into it. You guys may know that I, several months back, rebranded from davidrisley.com, which is just my name, to Blog Marketing Academy. And one of the main reasons I did that, outside of simply removing my name from it because I just didn't want to have my name that closely tied to it for future reasons, it was also a branding play, because the word David Risley doesn't mean jack crap to anybody who is, unless they're in my audience already. But the word Blog Marketing Academy, it's very clear what subject material the site addresses. So that was a big reason why I did it. People automatically get certain images in mind, and they know what that is about. Now, then there's the image component of it. Well, here's the image, the main image that I use for Blog Marketing Academy. It's this picture of the graph and the trend graph there. So again, what does that bring to mind? It usually is going to bring some kind of a business picture to mind, and we see the picture of increasing statistics. Ultimately, as bloggers, as business owners, isn't that what we want? Is our statistics going up? And another, just a little hidden thing that you may have noticed is that when I initially released this line was red. And then I had a few people and very correctly point out that the red color can actually bring to mind some things, especially in the world of business, that are not so great, like not making very much money. So I changed the arrow to green, because in business, green constitutes money, constitutes making more money, which I think goes more in line with the increasing statistic. And this is the image that I created. So now that's some thought as to why I actually made that image. And then let's look at my tagline. Again, another important component of brand. It's blogging for business simplified. So here's the thought behind that. First of all, you got blogging for business, very simple. It clearly communicates what the site is about, and then simplified, because I think a lot that is what people want. They want to boil down this very large topic into something simple and applicable. So therefore, that came down into the idea of blogging for business simplified. So with those three components there, we got the image here, we've got the blogging for business simplified, and we've got the word itself, Blog Marketing Academy. You can kind of see how the components came together to create the brand, or at least as I've created it as of now. So the question here as we end off is, Look at your own setup, your own blog, and how can you bring a cohesive brand to the table rather than just going out there and tweeting a bunch of stuff and Facebooking and thinking that just by doing that you're somehow creating this mythical quote-unquote personal brand. Don't do it without any rhyme or reason to it. Do it with some strategy in mind. If you want some more information on this, we're going to be going over it in a lot more detail inside the Academy, but this is the type of strategy that I like to talk about inside the Academy for students, because I think people need to think about this stuff rather than doing it in this ad hoc fashion that you often see in the online business world.